The Attorney General's Department and Parliament blamed for Ghana's economic woes for failure to check corruption.
Parliament is the one which should be asking the government, why do you have so many 97 ministers and deputy ministers? If you don't cut them down, we won't give you a penny. Parliament is the one which should be doing so. But Parliament doesn't do it. Why? Because we have a rubber stamp Parliament.
The retired professor of economics and a senior fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Professor George Aite, insists Ghana can only develop if institutions are strengthened and are held accountable. My name is Bright Nana Amfo, and this is today's big story. The professor of economics, Professor George Aite, says Ghana needs an aggressive Attorney General's Department to follow up on cases of corruption and ensure culprits are brought to account. He also called on Parliament to play a leading role in the fight against corruption.
Parliament is the one which should be asking the government, why do you have so many 97 ministers and deputy ministers? If you don't cut them down, we won't give you a penny. Parliament is the one which should be doing so. But Parliament doesn't do it. Why? Because we have a rubber stamp Parliament. That's why the problem has gotten out of control. There's no check on government spending. No check on government spending. So, I mean, if you're part of the government, you can spend whatever amount of money that you have, and nobody is checking you or looking over your shoulders. You continue to do so. To fight corruption well, you need three key institutions. You need one, a free and an aggressive media to expose it. That's number one. The second one, having exposed the problem, I think the media, they do it quite well. If you listen to the radio, every time, they're always exposing, talking about corruption. Okay, so it's being exposed. Okay. Now the second thing, once after you've exposed it, you need to have an aggressive Attorney General to follow up, to prosecute the corrupt. Okay, and the third institution that you need is an independent judiciary to take the corrupt to court and to punish the corrupt for all to see. Now, if the media exposes corruption and the Attorney General doesn't take action, then you're not winning the war against corruption. So that's how the thing is. So I'm not going to blame the media practitioners for not doing their job. They can expose it. That's all that they can do. It is Parliament and the Attorney General which has to follow through and prosecute the corrupt and bring them to court. Now, after they've been brought to court, it is the court system which is supposed to punish them for all to see.
Professor George Aite also added that the Constitution was defective and needed a review to include particularly the element of separation of powers to avoid a rubber stamp Parliament. I'll soon be speaking to the Majority Chief Whip, Muntaka Mohammed. He's just joined me on phone. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Now, first of all, Professor George Aite thinks that the fight against corruption simply rests with Parliament. How would you react to this?
Well, just as I will agree with him partially, I also believe that it is not solely dependent on Parliament. It is dependent on all of us. I'm sorry to say that we all get the kind of leaders that we expect or we deserve. Because I'm sorry to say, if you look at past 12 years or 20 years since we started this democratization, the Fourth Republic, you will agree with me, year in or election after election, both the citizenry and those who want to contest seem to be pushing a lot of resources, not only money, using other means that all of us, by every means, if you describe corruption, will qualify to get in there. So once you use this method to come in, obviously you are faced with the real challenge of how to deal with the citizenry, that's your constituents or the people who elected you or those who supported you, to deal with it. And I can assure you that it is an extremely difficult exercise.
Do you think,
yes,
Honorable,
but not only Parliament. Yeah.
Honorable, do you think that the work of a member of Parliament, especially those who belong to the side of government, in effort at getting ministerial positions, perhaps in a way stops them from keeping the executive on its toes when it comes to fighting corruption?
I don't want to believe so. You will see that the whole structure is dependent on the executive. I'm sorry to be saying this. I mean, I've been in the House for some time now, and I can tell you, if your budget has to be, decided by the executive, if a lot of things that you have to do have to go through the executive, you naturally, without you even maybe noticing, will have a situation where you'll be doing things to suit the executive. That is one. Two, if you have a structure such that both the government and opposition are constantly thinking of their party strength. For example, the opposition will want to say things every time just to gain political points. You will then push the majority to do everything at every point in time to keep their party on top. So it reduces all of us to the kind of football scoring. You score one, I have to score to neutralize. So you push me, I have to push you. So it's like, rationally, you will see that when there are heated arguments or heated issues where we need to be, realistic with each other, we need to look at it in a non-partisan manner, we need to look at it in the collective interest of our country, we run to the post. So if, for example, you are in opposition and then you run to your corner, the majority runs to their corner too. And then by the time you realize you are throwing exchange. But nevertheless, let me say, if you
Honorable, I'm not cutting in rudely, but from what you're saying, it suggests that not this parliament, but parliaments, not this particular one, but parliament have all the while been rubber stamp. That's what you're suggesting.
Not necessarily. I mean, you remember that lag and by, we agree 84% of the time. The research shows that 84% of the time we agree. Where you agree with me also. All right. Not every issue in our country that is controversial.
All right, Honorable, you hold it there. Hold it there. Let me speak to a political science lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Aminu Dramani. Thank you, sir, for your time. Now, the concern here is that members of parliament, especially those on the side of government, will need to please the executive in order to get positions. As a result, they are unable to keep the executive on its toes when it comes to the fight against corruption. How would you first of all react to this?
Thank you, and good evening to your listeners. Like you rightly indicated, that is the case. And if that is the case, then we'll continue to experience what we are experiencing now. I believe that was the reason why the call came some time ago that we need to look at that carefully so that pressure that would be on the parliament just because its members will go to the executive doors knocking for position. If that happens, then it means that they will always or almost always have to do to please the executive. And once that happens, then they cannot be as effective as they're supposed to be.
And when it happens like that, do you think that we can ever overcome this particular problem?
Why not? We can if you want to. If the law or the constitution is what is providing the problem, creating the problem, why can't we look at these things? With the recent constitutional review, why couldn't we take advantage and look at some of these things? We make the laws to guide us, to protect us, and lead us. So if we feel that there is a provision that is not helping us, why can't we go back and relook at them?
By the nature of our politics and the fact that Honorable Osei Muntaka himself confirmed that sometimes the MPs would have to please the executive, you think that we'll have that political will to take a second look at the Constitution and perhaps review it to resolve this?
Yes, if you really talk, we are really talking about Ghana first, then we shouldn't have any problem at all. Except if you want to talk about ourselves as individuals or groups of individuals. If it is the good of this nation we are looking at, if it is the interest of Ghana and Ghanaians that we are talking about, then this should not create any problems for us. Except if you want to talk about its implementation or revision would block what we would have had if that had not been done, then that would be the issue. But I still even think that if you are an MP and you don't even get this ministerial position, you can still play your role. But so long as you want that ministerial appointment, remember, you still have to go knock on the doors of the executive to get that appointment. And if you get it, it doesn't end there. You would have to dance to the tune of the executive, largely.
Dramani, hold the line for me. Let me go back to Muntaka Mohammed there. Now, the suggestion is that perhaps we need to take a second look at our constitution so that ministers or MPs will not have to go knocking at the door of the executive in seeking for favors. That can help. Is that what he thinks too?
No, I disagree with him. We have living examples. Let's look at the matter. Every minister is in the parliament. The prime minister himself sits in parliament. So the whole government is also parliament. Yet you get a situation where MPs on the majority side who criticize the prime minister will be able to speak against some of the policies or issues that the prime minister wants to bring up in government. And recently you saw in UK, the prime minister with his majority lost a vote on Syria. You've seen in America, where there's complete separation. No MP is with the executive. Yet you have a situation where the government, where anytime it has majority, it can always get things done in parliament. Not because in Congress, for that matter in America, not because those MPs will have a way of becoming ministers, but because they are in their system. The reason why it works is that in their system, if there's a vote, every vote stands alone. So the people of Aswanti can constantly see how I'm voting. And based on the way I'm voting, they can choose to let me remain there or not to let me remain there. Is it what we are doing in Ghana? No. Why? Because we don't seem to have the government will say that we don't have enough resources to buy the equipment that will enable voting to be done head on and head on. Two, as we are speaking, what kind of society have we built? And we polarize our communities. People do not even talk about the issue. They are just talking about politics. They are just talking about the party. So, for example, if I'm representing Aswanti and the people of Aswanti are so partisan, they are not looking at the issues, I am pressured. It's not about being minister.
Right.
It's not about, you are pressured by the community that you can, because they themselves don't even understand the issues. So that's why I'm saying that we are getting the kind of leaders that we deserve, because that is the way we want them to behave. Look, I can tell you, as an MP, this is my third term. Sometimes your council don't even want to see you with an MP of the opposite party. They begin to complain. So we need to do a lot of work. It has nothing to do with ministerial position or government position. It has to do with strengthening parliament in terms of its budget, in terms of how it operates, in terms of how its people are even elected. When we do this, that's when you get people who are independent because their constituents are supporting them. When they say they disagree with their party because of where they are coming from, their people will support them. Do you think that I, as a member of Aswanti, where it's predominantly NDC, can have the courage to say certain things and then my constituents will not respond negatively because they think that that's our party? No matter what it is, I should remain there. So we need to do a lot of education.
Right.
That's the only time we can get these things. Other than that, we can control talking. Look, remember the Limam time. You can separate complete separations, and the government will crash. Believe me.
Right. Thank you so much. Let's leave it. The Honorable Muntaka Mohammed, Majority Chief Whip there. Dramani is still on the line there. Now, let me pick this for now. He is suggesting that strengthening Parliament is simply not the issue. He thinks that the partisan nature of our politics, perhaps, is one of the reasons why the fight against corruption is not yielding results.
You see, what I said earlier was because we were talking about the political will to do it.
Right.
Right. Now, if we are saying that parliamentarians are not able to do what they are expected to do because the issue, because this political party is trying to create a good image for itself, the other two would do same. Now, if that is the trend, if what the other one is doing is wrong, does not necessarily mean that the other side should also do it. Again, I did say that if you are an MP and you needn't have to be a minister to be able to carry out or do what is expected of you and do it right. I did say that. Now, what that meant was that you didn't have to necessarily be a minister, so that if you really have the will, you are determined, you have the value, you know what you are going to do is right, you don't even care whether you get ministerial appointment or not. If that should be the attitude of the parliament, right, I believe that we can get things done. That is what I'm talking about.
And he seems to suggest that the partisan nature of our politics perhaps is what is causing all these issues of corruption flying in the air.
Yes, it's because we've continued to allow that to continue to be the case. You see, when people get to understand how things are done, the tendency for them to shift or change their thinking is very high. But if those who lead us paint the picture that way to us, that this is my opponent and therefore, if you like, my enemy, that is how those at the grassroots will see it. But if they see what we say, whether in the public or behind the curtains to these people, are issues demonstrating that, look, they are on the other side, yet they are not our enemies. Just that we are all embarking on the same journey to the same destination, only that the routes or the means of transport is what we are not agreeing on. But that does not make us enemies. I believe people will understand this, and this whole thing can be put to rest.
But please hold the line for me. Let me play a soundbite of Professor George Aite, where he talks about separation of powers being very critical in the fight against a rubber stamp parliament in order to reduce and check corruption. Let's listen. I'll come back to you.
The reason why we have this state of affairs was because we have a defective constitution. Okay. Now, a constitution is supposed to have separation of powers and independent institutions. Okay. When the Constitution was written in 1992, this was not the case. Okay. We created a very, very powerful executive. Now that's what Rawlings wanted back then. A very powerful executive. Now that executive back then appointed the Speaker of Parliament, drew all his ministers from Parliament. Okay? And then he set up a district assembly. Now that district assembly is the president appointed 30% of all the members of the executive assembly. Now the president appoints the members of the Supreme Court. Now you see, when you do this kind of thing, then it means that the institutions are not independent. You have made them subservient to the executive. Now when you make them subservient to the executive, when you let the president appoint the Speaker of Parliament, then Parliament becomes rubber stamp. This is where you have to separate the executive from Parliament. You also have to separate the executive from the judiciary.
Thanks for staying there. Let me welcome Jacob Osei, the independent candidate for the 2012 presidential election. He's just joined this discussion. Mr. Aminu Dramani, let's stay on this particular issue, talking about the fact that we need to do some separation. And precisely, let's tie in this. Some of us argue that in the fight against corruption, we need to separate the post of the Attorney General from that of the Minister of Justice. And by that means, they think that we can pursue this cause very well. You share the view?
Well, that will be part of it. the fight against corruption should not come from just one angle. Separating it alone will not solve the problem. You know, if, like he did say, if you look at the powers that the executive has to appoint this, put this in this place, go to the district assembly, the people are compelled to be responsible to you. They want to look up to you. They want to turn to you. They want to listen to and act on what you are saying.
Right.
So that separation will not necessarily be the only way to do it. Yes, I agree. It will have a role to play a significant role. We need to do more than that.
Let me speak to Jacob Osei. He is still on the line here. Jacob, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Bright.
Now,
good evening to your audience.
Right. The argument here, first of all, is that Parliament will need to be strengthened. The fact is that we need to ensure members of Parliament are able to check the executives. That, according to Professor George Aite, we can then check corruption. First of all, your reaction.
Yeah, right. You see, the issue of corruption, I think, goes beyond the executive or the realms of government. Indeed, what Professor Aite said is right. We need that kind of separation to serve as a check and balances. Okay, we need that one. Unfortunately, the 1992 Constitution actually created a very powerful executive. And for that matter, there's a need for us to find a better way of balancing that power to the executive, such that people could be independent enough. You know, this issue, I also see it from our cultural point of view. I mean, the way we see our kids, or the way we see the father in a family. Whatever the elder says, is that right? And everybody might want to look at the elder without challenging even the thought pattern of the elder. It has also some cultural ramifications. But in dealing with the issue of corruption, it has to cascade down to the very voter, to every single Ghanaian, as to how we ought to build our society devoid of corruption or reducing corruption to the barest minimum. That goes beyond that. That is my point of view.
It's not it's not only Parliament. Let me also pick your brains on this. Now, I've been speaking to a former Attorney General, Martin Amidu, now who says that the AG's department, the problem there is not with the institution. The problem is with the people. He said you need an AG that is worth his or her caliber, who would then whip all the attorneys there into line. And that is the only way we can fight corruption. That is the kind of assertion he's making.
I will agree and disagree with that. You see, in fighting corruption, you need to put the right structures in place. Now, you know, corruption is the goal. But what is the framework that will ensure that we will be able to achieve the barest minimum of corruption? That is what we need in place. Because if you have a strong Attorney General in Martin Amidu's caliber, what happens if we don't have such a person? Then the system collapses. So, and for that matter, what structure do we think that we need in place? What are the performance indicators of the attorneys over there? Now, from what we've been hearing, it's just like the attorneys themselves are conniving with the members of the public. Instead of even defending the state, they even connive with the complainant and then make sure that they get something out of that. Partly because maybe they are not being paid very well. You know, so we need to actually sit down and look at the structure. But the structure should not be invoked in the personality. The personality, they are fine. Let me be honest with you. Every human being is a potential selfish being. With the exception of Jesus Christ alone, I would say that all of us, we are potentially selfish. And that is why you always need laws to regulate the insatiability of the human nature. That is who we are. For that matter, we need these structures in place to ensure that first the Attorney General will truly defend the nation. All the attorneys under him are also doing their work very well. Who is supposed to do that? We have institutions like currently IOCO. What are they doing? To what extent can we actually empower them? Now, if you look at Parliament as enshrined in our Constitution, just look at Article 103, plus 3, actually states what the investigative powers of the committee in Parliament, to the extent of having the power of a high court. Okay, to what extent have we actually built that capacity in the committees of Parliament in terms of resourcing them enough? What kind of training capacity have we given to the members of the committee?
Right.
You see, we've not done all of these things, so it means that there are lots to be done, and we need to put in a lot of thought patterns into it and get the processes and procedures right.
I'll come back. I'll come back to you to wrap up, but let me wrap up with the political science lecturer Aminu Dramani. Now, the issue of the caliber of the AG and attorneys there, Mr. Martin Amidu, a former AG, thinks very, very crucial. But the presidential candidate of the 2012 presidential election, Mr. Jacob Osei, thinks that we should not put, let me say, the power in the personality there, but we should rather strengthen the institution itself. I want your reactions whilst we wrap up on this.
Yes, why is it important we put the emphasis on the institution? Because first, the institution itself must be there for any other individual we consider capable to come and work with it. So if the institution is not well strengthened, no matter how strong, how good, or how skillful this person is, he will still suffer deficiency. Apart from that, when we have everything with the institution, then we need supervision. If the supervision is weak, the institution can have or put in place all that there is, so there will be problems. So the institutions must be there. We need supervision, effective supervision. If, for example, I should take a businessman to want to register his business, and we know the law says that he should be with the Registrar General for 3 days, and the thing is there for 7 days, nobody says he reports or she reports, no action is taken. This person will be compelled to want to part with something to have it pushed or done.
Right.
But if there's that supervisor who would check and make sure that form has left the desk we're supposed to leave, then we will get things done. So yes, the institutions must be reinforced. We need to make conscious efforts to strengthen the institution. Then we must get people tasked with responsibility of ensuring that the institution is effective. Then we can make a headway.
Thank you so much for speaking to me. Aminu Dramani, political science lecturer, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Let me wrap up with Mr. Jacob Osei, who is a presidential candidate in the 2012 presidential elections. And now, so the fight against corruption, you think that apart from Parliament and the AG's department, it's a matter of the public, all of our society, coming in to support it. Let's wrap up on this.
Yes, you see, we all have to take active role in ensuring that at least corruption comes to the barest minimum. And let me be frank with you. Partisan politics breeds corruption.
Right.
Without the right institution and structure. That is why, I stated during the campaign that I would use ICT in fighting corruption. Just using an example that the political scientist I just mentioned. If you need a document from the Attorney General's office and it's delayed, through an ICT system, what could be done is that once you send the document there, you can have an electronic, either via your text email or through your email, that we have indeed received it. And within 3 days' time, they're supposed to give you a feedback. If there's no feedback, you have the electronic information to that. And for that matter, you can take them on wherever that you can. And the moment that they are aware that such information can actually leak, then they will sit up. Because one of the cardinal points in fighting political corruption is availability of information. And that is why the Right to Information Bill is very crucial to all of us as a nation in fighting corruption. That is the first step.
Thank you so much for speaking to me. Jacob Osei was a former presidential candidate in the 2012 presidential election. They're talking about issues of corruption. Now that wraps us for the first segment of today's big story. Don't forget that exactly a year ago, 14 Ghanaians died tragically at the Malcolm building around Achimota when it collapsed on them, and a lot more were rescued, about 70 of them rescued by emergency services. How has the building industry fared 1 year after that tragic accident? The second segment of the show will stay interactive on that very particular show. My name again is Bright, and so stay right there. I'm back with the second segment in a moment. Welcome back. It was a tragic accident that happened and 14 Ghanaians lost their lives. A lot more were rescued under the rubble from the Malcolm site at Achimota, and that is what Interactive will stay on. How has the construction industry, the building industry, fared 1 year on? Lady Marian is just right here. It's a tragic accident that remembering it brings sorrows. And what happened that day?
And this morning a few of them came to the Super Morning Show to actually share their experiences, and I think my takeout was that one was saying, I was given only 1,000 Ghana cedis as compensation, but the government has failed me, but I have my life, and so I live to fight another day.
Welcome, Marian.
Thank you. Welcome to JN Interactive. My name is Marian Toure. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching JN Interactive within today's big story, and we are talking about the Malcolm disaster 1 year on. I'd like to announce all the social media tools that you need to get in touch with the show. You can find us on Joy News. That is, if you're on Facebook, it's facebook.com/Joy News on TV. We tweet at Joy News on TV. Please remember to use the hashtag JNInteractiveGH so that we'll be able to sort all your tweets out all together and take them all at once. And then if you're sending us an email, send them to joynewsim@multitvworld.com. If you're sending us WhatsApp, it's 0260 518-801. I am also on Twitter, and I tweet at MN Toure. So JN Interactive is where tech meets news to set the agenda. We're talking about Malcolm. 1 year after the shopping mall, disaster, which claimed 14 lives, survivors say they feel let down by, the country's leaders. And survivors say while they were still struggling with the post-traumatic stress disorder from the harrowing experience in the building collapse, authorities have failed to hold any persons accountable for the disaster. And some 81 21 persons who were pulled out of, the rubble have been complaining and saying this. President Mahama, when it happened, he had to cut short his campaign to visit the scene of the incident, while rescue efforts were still ongoing. And we all remember he promised drastic actions against those whose failures may have led to that incident. But that does not appear to have happened. Some were given as little as 1,000 Ghana cedis as compensation. And today on JN Interactive, 1 year on, and as it falls on this very day, we want to know where you were when the news broke. What were you doing? And do you think that we have learned our lessons? And the final question is, who is ultimately to blame for this particular disaster? And our cameras always catch up with you wherever you are. We have caught up with you, and we've been asking, Malcolm disaster 1 year on, where were you and how did you hear about it? Let's take our first video blog.
Incident, I was in Accra. It's very painful when we heard it, and very, very strange because we were not even aware of it, you see. And the way people were dying, especially these mothers, pregnancy women, we heard about it. And the way they were taking the people from the blocks and then the underground, it was so pity. So
it was shocking. If people lose their life, it's not a pleasant news. So all of us were shocked.
Actually, that day I hear that incident, I feel very shocked. Otherwise, my brother shop at that place, so I feel shocked, and I'm quickly called my brother to find out. So everything is okay.
So you've also been sharing your comments with us on social media, and so many of them have been coming through. You're commiserating with the people, and then you're telling us where you were, because the idea is to share your thoughts and we share them with the rest of the world. I'll take some comments before we go on and take some of our video blogs. Philip says, indeed, it is only today that I've realized that our leaders do not care about our lives, but rather about their prosperity. I'm not blaming anybody apart from, the owners of Malcolm as a whole. May their souls rest in peace. Chumesi says he was in the classroom and he was browsing on the internet when he heard it. Majid says he is in Gushegu and he was... it tastes terrible, that's what you're trying to say, and may their souls rest in peace. Baba Musa Tamale says, for me, 1 year on, I am not fully convinced that many Ghanaians have really learned any useful lessons from the unfortunate Malcolm disaster, considering the manner in which some people still go about putting on concrete structures and buildings. But has any punishment been meted out to the owner of the collapsed building at Achimota? We're yet to find that out, and as soon as we do, we will send, we will let you know. Another one says, may God bless our politicians who gave rights to all these foreigners to come in and enjoy the fruit of our forefathers put down for us. The life of innocent people are in plain. God bless Ghana and God bless Africa. We'll go and take our next video blog. We've also been asking whether we have learned our lessons as a nation. Have we learned our lessons? And this is what you had to say in our next video blog.
Now everybody will think for how, if you want to build house, you know how to build it well. You see, that it to belong to everybody.
So that is what that gentleman thought. We are asking also who is ultimately to blame for this. We'll take our next video blog and then I'll take some more of your comments when we come back.
It is the AMA who issued a building permit, I think. Or I'm a bit confused with this. But I think the AMA issues building permit. So whoever issued the building permit should have inspected the building before issuing the building permit. And what we learned was the actual design that they brought, which was approved, they did not go by that design. They extended the structure. That is what happened. So, me, I blame. There was no supervision, so I blame the AMA as well as the one who put out the building, the contractor.
As for me, I blame the shop, not the shop owner, but the no, not the contractor, the shop owners. They put heavy goods inside the building. That is why we have something like grasses building, and you have a concrete building. That building is a grasses building. So you're supposed to know the quantity goods you put inside that building. Yeah, that is why.
We can blame the contractor because maybe the building was not well built. Maybe it was not all that. The foundation was very poor, or either the way they were loading the things up. That is what we heard. We heard that the wholesale was up, and this can cause a lot of disasters. So I think there are so many major factors. I don't know whether the building belongs to the government.
It's not from the government, or let's say maybe the contractor and the management too, because where they load their where they kept for their warehouse and their goods, it's counted.
So let's take some more of your comments which you have been sending through to us. George says, I was in my room watching Joy News on Multi TV when I heard the news. I think our building inspectors must be brought to book for their shoddy works. Akosia Brown, please, how can we say 1,000 Ghana cedis is little? Why are people always so biased and negative? How much did you expect each victim to receive? It was a question. And so your thoughts, you have brought it in, and of course, it is welcome. We have shared it with the rest of the world. Christian Salvo says, that's very sad to hear, but it's 1 year today. But the Bible said, in all things, give thanks and praise to the Supreme Being. And of course, I'm sure most of the families are giving thanks for whatever happened, that at least those who survived will say, we have survived, we got 1,000 Ghana cedis as compensation. But we have life. We'll live to fight another day. So I guess that should keep them going, and God would also help them. Newton Jeffer says, it's such a sad moment. I was in my house watching Joy News channel when the news broke. May their souls rest in peace. Roland says, I was in Tamale at my workplace when I was treating a client when the news came in. Abdul Rahman Jawad says, I was in school, but those responsible for the disaster are still parading themselves as technical staff. Until we take responsibility for our actions, we'll continue to experience such calamities. And that is very true. Kolo Isa Ibn Ali says, Ghana actually doesn't solve small problems, but big ones. Even with that, people are still building without any proper permits. Gershon says, I was at Hohoi studying. I'd like to say that we have to stand up as individuals, communities, and a nation to address such issues. I think we forget quickly as a nation to learn from such issues. God help us. Mohammed Abubakar says, the Metro Chief Executive should be blamed for that. He seems to speak too much. So you believe he should act rather than talk? Roland Yeboah Fineboy says, I think everyone is to be blamed because we all played a part in the ultimate death or untimely death of 13 lovely human beings who never estimated something like that sort on them. Very, very sad. I remember this day. Mohammed Abdulaziz says, some of the victims need assessment and possible treatment of a psychologist or psychiatrist. They are suffering from a condition called post-traumatic stress disorder. And yes, some have actually said that they are. Karim Fuseni, I was in the ward taking care of patients as a nurse when the news broke. Kennedy Asare Bakrin says, may their souls rest in peace. Christian Salvo, I don't think that we Ghanaians have learned any lessons from the terrible disaster because we're still making the same mistakes. And I think that it is time to change our attitudes as a society. And you couldn't have said it any better. We need to change. Change is what is important, not changing others and not telling others they need to change. But we need to look within ourselves and change ourselves, work on ourselves one day at a time. I'll take 2 more comments and we'll go and take our final video blog. These are problems we face as a third world country where citizens face high consequences of mismanagement and neglect by those in higher ranks. It's quite unfortunate the aftermath of this doesn't seem to be a wake-up call to other Ghanaians. In much developed countries, the families and friends of those who perished should have received entitlements and some settlements. The government hasn't ensured anything, and it seems not to even, the president seems not to even care. Kwame Nkrumah would have wept bitterly if he were alive today to see what is happening to his Ghana, the country he loved so much and even laid down his life for. Shaking my head. And that is from Mills Obwama. And we'll pause here and then take our last video blog. And we are asking, Malcolm disaster 1 year on, is 1,000 Ghana cedis enough compensation for all the trouble that they have been through? Let's take our last video blog.
That compensation, I think it's just normal, something like they appreciate the people. But so far as somebody lost in life, we can't do anything to compensate that person. So anything or small thing the government or that building owners can do, maybe it's good. Yeah, they can do more. They can do more. Something like Ghana, the people over there, the victim is affect them, so they can help them in something like financially, something like somebody have a kid and want to go to school, supposed to help them. That can be.
Losing your leg for 1,000 Ghana cedis, they could have done better than what they did if that is what they gave them. They should take care of them. If they should assess them. If there are people who are working like driver, you can't drive with what do you call amputated leg. Even if they fix that artificial leg, you can't drive with it. You see, so if they should put them on like sort of pension, whereby they will remunerate, they will be giving them money periodically. So certain period, I think it will be okay.
Got 1,000 Ghana cedis. You spend it for only 1 month. Because maybe if you are having a family like 2 or 3, and a day you can't even use 10 cedis as a chop money or whatever. So what I'm thinking is that the 1,000 Ghana cedis was just a peanut. It can't even educate some of the children, those who lost their people. It can never help them. Their education, their feeding, their clothing, and maybe if they are having a rent, they have a tenant, maybe they have rented a house, how are they going to pay? But if the disease was there, alive, I think you could have. So they have to do something about it. It's very pity.
And now even school fees, it can't pay the school fees, all the school fees, and it can't keep the house too. Nothing can make them happy because they've lost their loved ones. I don't think nothing can make them happy. The money can replace lives. If even the whole world, they give you the whole world, it can't replace their lives. I think so.
The money is not, it's a beauty, because it's too small. The money is too small, but it happened already. So how can I do it? So if we don't give them something, it's not good. But we pray to God to help their soul. If individuals can help something, I think maybe it's good.
And that is what you've been sharing with us. You've been sharing your thoughts with us. I'll take some more of your comments before we wrap up. Ilyasu Haruna says, my heart bleeds at the testimony of one of the victims as he admits to the pittance given to him as compensation. It was even revealed that the company Malcolm failed to insure the employees. I wonder what would have been the fate of the Malcolm owners if they were Ghanaians. How can the authorities allow aliens to flout our laws this way? Simon says, I was at school. I was shocked when I heard the news. Prince Jacob says, I was home minding my own business and fighting something approach I can't tell you, nobody is doing nothing now, waiting for another thing to happen, and we will make noise again. God save us. Kelly Bliss, I was in my room watching Joy News. It was really awful. May the souls of the faithfully departed rest in perfect peace. Samuel says, thank God some survived, and the souls of the dead rest in peace. But 1,000 Ghana cedis is not small if some had that. Some don't even get anything somewhere in this country. That's what you're saying, that because some don't get it, 1,000 cedis, you feel is enough. Well, that's what you think. Umar says, oh, it is a pity, and may their souls rest in peace. We have not learnt our lesson, Marian. Lauren says, may their souls rest in perfect peace. Al-Hassan Bindi says, Ghana is just under the protection of God. If not, our politicians are not well-educated ones, and they're just robbing us. They are just adamant about our plight. Fortune says, I was in Koforidua. It was very, very terrible. Seth Riafi, from day one, I knew it was one of the Ghana moments. I least expected anything positive from government. What happened to the owner of the building? What happened to the checks on all high-rise buildings in Ghana? You're asking questions, and yes, 1 year on, there are still so many questions that are left to be answered. But thank you for all your comments, right?
Right, so when we hit your screens at 8 o'clock, we'll tell you that former President Kufuor has called on the youth to stand for the truth and demand accountability from their leaders. He was addressing the Young Adult Fellowship of the Nantongma Memorial Congregation of the Presbyterian Church, Kanda, who called on him at his residence.
And also coming up in news at 8 with Israel Laye, it is still the Malcolm story, which is talking about 20 survivors, 20 people who survived the Malcolm disaster at Achimota Thursday morning. They conveyed them to the scene for a memorial, and the event was a chilling reminder of how lucky they were to have survived, unlike their 14 colleagues who perished.
And also, Jukan members of parliament have been urged to make maternal and newborn survival a national priority to ensure the MDG 4 and 5 are attained. The call came from a civil society organization, Evidence for Action, which has embarked on a project dubbed Mamaye to help in the attainment of the two goals. We'll have more of these coming up for you on News at 8.
My name is Marian Toure.
And I'm Brian, and thanks so much for your time. Join us exclusive. It's coming up next.
Good evening.